Welcome back. Nigeria's oil production rose to an 8-month high of 1.35 million barrels a day in December. That's according to the latest survey by Bloomberg. The increase lifted total crude output from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries by 150,000 barrels to 29.14 million barrels a day within the period. Industry experts attribute this new rise in the country's oil output to the federal government's crackdown on oil theft, which include the monitoring in real time of oil infrastructure with the NNPCL's new automated platform, as well as whistleblower scheme against oil thieves in the country. We also help us delve into this much more is Bolanle Agbaje, second time this week. Hi, Bolanle.
Hi,
good morning.
Good morning.
So this is good news. You like good news?
Yes, I always do. I knew obviously they were going to crack down on and make sure that they, put their hands on those, thieves and the oil theft, because it's not good news for Nigeria as a major oil producer in African states. So we already expected that this was going to happen, and hopefully it's going forward from there, because our oil production, a few years back was about 1.8, and we have the capacity to produce up to 2 million barrels per day. So this is welcome news for us.
And of course, that would mean more money for us in our coffers, and more dollars, which could help strengthen the naira.
Yes, and also help fund the budget.
And also help fund the budget, because we're just talking about how to get more than 7 trillion naira from capital market this year alone. Hoping that the capital market can withstand that amount of pressure. But another conversation going on around this is the sustenance of this. We do know that it's costing the federal government a lot of money to employ that private security outfit that is helping carry out this. So that is, on the one hand, the expenses of that. And some people are even skeptical that why should the government employ private security.
So, especially in a case where, according to the standard economic theory, in a case where you feel like the private sector cannot handle certain aspects of the economy, that's when you see the government coming in and making sure that they pull things together in order to aid production and, also boost growth from now, obviously, until the short term, medium term, and more or less long term. But in actual fact, the Minister of Finance actually mentioned the fact that, the petrol subsidies is currently on till mid this year, and it will be nice if that money is translated to this oil private employing the private security that the government is doing, but it's not the case at the moment. And obviously I understand where they're coming from. I think at the time mid last year where they decided to remove the particular subsidy, they got a lot of threats from labor unions and all that, and trying to be popular and remain popular amongst individuals, you more or less keep that subsidy in place. And it'll be nice to see what the new administration does in terms of
very interesting, Bolanle, honestly, because the timing is so interesting. We expect there to be a handover by May, and then by June the subsidy regime ends, and the new government is supposed to accommodate that. The government that is just coming in, will they be able to handle labor and the social adverse effects that will come out of the removal of the subsidy?
It would be very unpopular for a new government or a new administration to more or less take that out, and because the immediate impact of that on most individuals in the economy would be very harsh.
I think everybody will feel it.
Yes, but the truth about it is, I think it's better to just do away with the subsidies and let the economy just find its balance in the near term. If we had done this a while ago, we would probably be in a better place at the moment, but it's not the case. Although, the Minister of Finance kept talking about the fact that non-oil revenue had increased by, or is expected to even increase by, about 78%, and that's what the budget is supposed to be funded by. And oil revenue is about 22%. So it would be nice to see that, in reality, although we do know that agriculture contributed about 30% to the last GDP figures that we saw. So it's great news for us, but in reality, it means that it's not just about having the commodities and, being buoyant with those commodities. It's about the operations and making them efficient and generating the amount of revenue because the potential is ridiculous for Nigeria.
You mentioned potential in Nigeria.
No,
everybody just go because we have so much potential, but it still remains a potential, you know, and that can be discouraging that you have the potential and you cannot develop that potential.
Yeah.
You know, but when you talk about funding the budget from oil, like I think in 2022, it was pegged at $65. But this year now, we could go back to that conversation of the excess crude.
Yes, but right now oil prices are currently trading at about $78, and I think the benchmark is pegged at 75. So it's a big risk for us right there. But we're really hopeful that oil prices would, you know, continue to increase. And although we're seeing this, you know, destabilizing with the prices just because of China, but I do know that, you know, major oil producing countries like Saudi, they would more or less not produce as much to make sure that prices, you know, remain at, you know, high levels for us. But it calls to question what prices are trading at now and what the benchmark was released yesterday. So it's a very,
I think that tricky benchmark is really is kind of risky. What if the war ends today?
So if the war ends, it'll actually be good news for us because it means that all countries will just, you know, go back to what they used to do, you know, in the past few years.
But what will happen to oil prices?
So it would most likely, you know, go up because, you know, that positive news would filter into most, not just oil price, most commodity prices. Because the major reason why we're seeing all these situations with commodity prices because Russia and, you know, Ukraine started whatever, you know, happened between the two of them. And that already, you had seen this boom and bust cycle with commodity prices, a case where either they go up as high as what we've never seen before, or they drop down, you know, significantly. So if, you know, you should see a situation where Russia actually stops the war today, and I'm definitely sure that, you know, most of those countries can get back to business as usual and produce the way they used to, and prices can actually regulate in the market.
And then we'll have to also deal with the COVID situation in China.
Yes, it's very unfortunate. And also, I think what happened with oil prices yesterday was the fact that the IMF, you know, mentioned the fact that, you know, the recession is here to stay, especially for 1/3 of the world economy, and also the fact that, you know, increasing COVID cases in China is going to be harsh.
We've seen there are some new countries now that are beginning to introduce restriction for China.
Yes, Ghana is one of them that also released a statement.
Getting closer home now.
Yes, it is. And I did see a report about COVID cases in Nigeria as well. So, you know, there's that talk coming up with COVID again. And it's like COVID is just here to stay. And it's best to just find and adjust to the new normal around you.
Well, we hope China can, because they're affecting oil prices and every other thing in the world.
I'm sure it's a strategy for them to, you know, because the protests were there, open up the economy. We've been closed down for so long.
But they're turning it political. I don't know if you've seen that now. The Chinese government is saying restriction on China or Chinese travelers is political. And I'm like, countries are just trying to protect themselves.
Exactly, and prevent what we had seen in 2020. Yes. So it might be both, because there must be some signs that, you know, the Chinese government is seeing and making sure that they, you know, put that news out there for individuals to also not stop business with China as usual.
Okay, all right. So we see the price of gas also.
Yes, it has, you know, dropped by about 50%, and it's a lot. It's good in any sense, but it's not good for our country because we're major producers. But in the sense that the milder weathers that we had seen from now, obviously going forward, had also reduced demand. And, you know, before that, you had seen a lot of European countries build inventory. But there's this particular risk towards the end of the year where they build again for the 2023 to 2024 year. So it must mean that prices would increase, you know, towards the end of the year as well. But in actual fact, you know, you have analysts that have mentioned the fact that it's great news for us, and it's also good for inflation as well. So its inflation numbers would most likely inch downwards too.
It would be good to see Nigerian inflation inch down.
Our forecast is that, you know, by the end of this year, we should see inflation at about 17%, we hope. And that's our positive expectations.
Yeah, well, I wonder, because even the UK yesterday, their inflation, December inflation, food inflation though, the general inflation I think tapered, but the food inflation did not give any
but you
sign.
know, Europe, actually most European countries are major consuming countries. So they would, whatever is happening with commodities, especially around around the world would be felt deeply within those countries in Europe.
So what else is going on with the agricultural products?
With the agricultural space, Tanzania is one that we need to learn from. You know, gold is one of their major, I think it contributes about 47% to their GDP, and we had seen prices increase by about 17%, which is great for them. And I think gold production had increased also to about 17,500 grams. So that's great, and it would be nice to learn from, you know, countries like that. Cocoa prices in Nigeria has actually increased as well in Ondo, Ogun, and Osun, and even Cross River as well. You're seeing cocoa prices trade at about $4,000, which is good for us. And I think what is making the effect even more is the fact that, you know, the depreciating naira, because obviously when you convert that into dollars is more for us. So that's great news for us, and it also contributes to what the expectations of the budget is, according to the minister.
Yeah, but it will also be nice to have more states, you know, because we do have the potential in other states.
Other states are, you know, buoyant with other types of commodities. So it would be nice to talk about other commodities that Nigeria could also benefit from, as much as, you know, we're benefiting from cocoa and oil.
So the harvest season, is it over?
Yes, over. So we're entering the planting season, and it will be good to, you know, what we're praying for actually is the weather that would actually contribute to, and also funding in that space. And then towards the mid of the year, we go into our, you know, harvest season again. So that is something to watch out for. Although domestic commodity prices, we're seeing a lot of commodity prices inch downwards. And I think it's the usual trend from the December period when you get into, from the peak period. So when you get into the beginning of the new year, there's this balancing out of, you know, commodity prices.
Well, I remember a statement by LCCI recently saying that, I mean, for us to survive this year and maybe maintain some sort of growth, the government interventions must be consistent.
It has.
Yeah,
because the private sector has been hit so bad, and you know they're still talking about taxes and increasing taxes, which is also going to put more pressure on private individuals. So right now is where, and it's the same trend all around the world, where you see government officials coming in to, you know, intervene in and make sure that, you know, the economy stays as stable and as sustainable as it can be.
Well, thank you so much, Bolanle. But we do pray for miracles, especially from the non-oil exports this year. It would really be nice, you know, to have buffer from that.
And also benefit from the AFCTA situation.
Because we're 2 years this year.
We are, and I don't think we've been able to benefit, you know, from that so far.
All right. Thank you so much
for having me.
Your optimism as usual and your contribution to the program this morning.
Thank you.